Hello, my name's Gavin Boyter and welcome to my channel. I'm going to do something a little bit different on this particular video because I'm going to talk you through my creative process, how I go about coming up with 1,000 word stories based on 5 random words. And what I think this is particularly good for is breaking writer's block, which is hence the subtitle of this video. Because if you're stuck on a particular scene or a particular chapter in a project and you just can't solve it, I think sometimes the best thing to do is to just put it to one side and flex your creative muscles in a different direction. This is like a little exercise that you can go through to keep you thinking, keep you making connections, keep you coming up with creative ideas, but you don't have the pressure of having to incorporate that into your, whatever significant piece you're working on. So it's kind of a little bit like cross-training for the brain. So you're using slightly different muscle groups, but you're still achieving the same aim of getting better as a writer. So first of all, I'm going to show you how I go about creating my stories. So I use this random text generator program, and I'll show you me choosing some words. So I'll just click here, and so those are the words I've got. The first thing I do is I write them down. So I just find it easier. I just find it easier to get them down in paper, because then I can start making literal connections between them. There we go. So that's the 5 words. I'm not going to use the word wrestle in its existing form, because that's an archaic form of wrestle. So I'm just going to substitute the modern word wrestle, which conveys the same idea. The first thing I notice, of course, is that I've got 2 adjectives there. I've got powerful and decent. So I'm going to be a little wiggly line between those to connect them. And I have fin and bacon, which is 2 nouns, and then I've got a verb in wrestle. So that sort of stands alone. Now, I'm immediately seeing a connection. My normal process would be to start with any outliers. That's any words that are particularly unusual, because they will tend to generate the idea, the sort of story world. Because if you saw the word, armour, something like I had yesterday. Now, armour can suggest a number of things. It can suggest a sort of medieval story of knights. It could suggest a modern day military setting, or it could suggest something more scientific, a vehicle that has to be armoured to withstand pressures or the depths of space. So that's what I ended up doing yesterday. I went for a story about space exploration, which was fun. So with powerful and decent, I've already got the suggestions of a character. Because there's a conflict there between the idea of someone who's incredibly powerful trying to be a decent person. So that's already making my sort of creative juices flow a little bit. Fin and bacon. Now, obviously there's a very obvious connection there in terms of perhaps foodstuffs. Bacon's pretty obvious. Bacon technically would be the outlier in this collection of words, but they're not very unusual words, so it's actually quite an easy set that I've been given. So I'm thinking maybe something about a chef or a restaurant or something. Fin is, of course, it could be, I could be lateral with this. I could think of it as, say, the tail fin of a car, an old classic American car, or I could think of it as like a kind of hairstyle. I believe there was a thing called a fin, that's sort of like a modern day Mohican. Or it could be the French word for the end of a movie, fin. But in this case, I'm going to take it quite literally as the fin of a fish. And I think maybe in the context of food, one thing springs to mind is shark's fin soup, which is considered a delicacy in some parts of the world, but it's very controversial because I believe if you need to procure a large number of shark fins, and most of the shark is not eaten, so it's thrown away. So it's kind of cruel. The shark is an endangered species in many parts of the world. So I see a conflict there already, and this ties in with decency, you see. So do we have 2 people conflicting over what they put on the menu, perhaps? Bacon being a very obvious standard food choice, shark's fin soup being a very controversial, difficult choice. You're going for different clientele if you're a restaurant offering those things. And so wrestle takes care of itself, because there's going to be somebody wrestling with their conscience, as well as maybe people wrestling with each other's attitudes. So you can see that just by making connections between these words, I've already come up with potentially a setting. I know it's going to be a modern day story because there's nothing there to suggest anything archaic. I kind of have an idea of the genre as well, because it's probably going to be either literary fiction, so quite a realistic story about conflict in the here and now, or it's going to be more like a thriller, where perhaps this is the jumping off point for something a bit darker. It could be a comedy, but I'm thinking with Shark's Fin Soup, it's going to be a black comedy, if anything. So there are already quite a lot of ideas flowing. I'm not going to go through the whole process with you. I'll just talk maybe about character, because if we want a conflict in this setting, the most powerful person in a restaurant would be perhaps either the head chef or the owner. So if we want conflict between two people, then those perhaps are the people that we choose. They're both powerful. Perhaps one's trying to do the decent thing and the other one's trying to do the most profitable thing. Now, whether you choose to make the chef the one who wants to put shark's fin soup on the menu, or the owner, my instinct is actually the owner wants to do that to make a sort of a fast buck on the sly, with a select crowd of private diners, something like that is popping into my head. And the chef is the one with decency who says, no, I'm not doing that, I'm not going to cook that. Which is an interesting position for a chef to be in. So already a story is beginning to present itself. Now, I'll put that to one side and I will write that story later and you'll be able to watch it, so you'll see what I come up with. Now, the process is basically decide on your setting, decide on your genre, and decide on your characters. The order in which you do that is not really important. It will come. They'll all come together. They're all intertwined. Structure is the next important thing. Now, in a 1,000-word story, structure pretty much dictates itself. You don't have much space to do a lot. So you've got your opening, where you have to set up your characters, the setting they're in, the genre expectations that your audience is going to have, and the conflict that those characters are in. In the middle section, which is probably going to be about 2/3 of your story, is the actual action, the dialogue, the conflict, how it plays out, and then you've got your ending. Now, there's a tendency in short stories like this to come up with a twist ending, but if it's... I'm not plugged in, am I? It's fine. I just realised I'm not actually plugged into this microphone, but I am speaking to you through the microphone in the camera, so we're going to be okay. Anyway, so twist endings that are incredibly tricksy are to be avoided, I think. Let the ending suggest itself. In the context of this exercise, to free your mind, to kind of get rid of the writer's block, to stretch yourself, you don't need to be too precious about making a perfectly formed piece for all eternity. That's not what this is about, really. So let the ending present itself. Go with your instinct. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. The main thing is, I think trying to sort of create this little clockwork masterpiece. You're going to be doing it for weeks. That's not what this is for. This process could take you 2 hours from coming up with a random word to the final story. That's what it should ideally take you, about 2 hours. So once you've written the first draft, write that as fast as you can. Don't worry about precision on your first draft. That's like one of the things that will hold you back most. Write it and then edit it and edit it and edit it. And that's why I've made this 1,000-word stricture for myself, because I know that by doing so I'll be removing all the dead wood, because I'm going to write probably about 1,300 to 1,400 words and then lose over 1/3 of my story. The first things that are going to come out are overly verbose turns of phrase, and nice little moments and details that don't really push the story on. Because in this sort of idea, it's not really about that. It's about getting the ideas down, conveying a story world in a very finite little package. So each subsequent pass is going to take out more stuff that you don't need, and it's really an eye-opening process to realize just how much everyone overwrites almost all the time. It'd be nice if we were all Hemingways who could just come up with precise minimalistic dialogue and minimalistic text. I know that that's not everyone's literary style, but in terms of something that people want to listen to, something they want to read as a short story, less is always more, I think. So once you've hacked it down to your 1,000 words, and sometimes I find I have to put some in to get to 1,000, which is a little bit iffy. I should be taking out rather than putting in, but anyway, most of the time I'm cutting things out. Then you read it, and that's why I perform the stories, because I want to hear them. I want to see, what's the pace and the rhythm like of this piece? Have I got that right? When it gets to a bit of action, do I have shorter sentences that sort of move the reader on quickly? Have I written any tongue twisters that are impossible to read? Have I repeated words because I like those words and I haven't noticed that I've repeated them? Am I putting unnecessary amounts of assonance in? So Susan shot the sheriff silently in the summer. I mean, it sounds silly, but you sometimes find yourself just doing that because the brain just makes connections when you're not trying to make those, and it likes the sound of assonance. But unfortunately, unless you're writing a song, it can sound stupid. You'll notice the errors, the grammatical errors, the factual errors. An important point I have not mentioned, research. This is where Google comes in. I'm going to write a story about shark's fin soup. I know nothing about shark's fin soup or shark fishing. I don't even know how to say it. So I'm going to go online in a bit and find out everything I can about that, so that I can inform my story with interesting details, facts, just basically make it convincing. And it's just, what I find as a writer is fantastic is learning new things, learning about worlds that I had no previous inkling of. And that's where this particular challenge that's where it will take you, into places you'd never imagined you'd go, because it's a short story. You can do that in a short. If we're going to write a novel about conflicts in the restaurant trade, that's going to be a monstrous undertaking for me. I'm going to have to really dig deep, and it's going to take years. But I can write a 1,000 word short story, hopefully without any factual errors about a restaurant having a conflict about whether they put shark's fin soup on the menu. So, in summary, if you follow this process, if you give it a try, you will find that your brain is doing what it does best as a writer. What it does best as a human. It's making connections, it's finding patterns. And if you allow yourself to be open and to let connections make themselves, and then find the story through that methodology, you'll never have nothing to write about. So you need never be blocked again. How you would relate that to your actual project is simply that through doing this, I suppose you're probably building neural pathways that you can then fall in and out of when you need to. Like any muscle, the brain needs to be used regularly, and your writing skills need to be honed through constant use. I'm not saying you need to write for hours every day, but try not to go too long without putting something down. So if any of you want to try this, I'm quite happy to send you 5 random words if you just drop me a line. Or you can go on textfixer.com, and there's a very useful little random word generator there, which I've been using. He's thrown out the word wrestle 3 times, which is a little bit worrying, but I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, it's great fun, it's very instructive, it makes you a better writer, and it might just unblock you. So give it a go and let me know what you find useful and whether you found this video useful. And if you did, I may do some more. So yeah, thanks very much for listening, and keep tuning in, keep subscribing, and keep sharing. Bye for now.